Have you ever had that strange feeling that something isn't quite right, but you can't explain why? A conversation ends, and you walk away with a vague discomfort. You agreed, but something inside you didn't. You said yes, when your whole body whispered no. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was something else, something deeper, a dissonance, as if your decision didn't come from you, but through you, as if your thoughts weren't yours, just the echo of someone else's agenda. Most people ignore this feeling. They call it overthinking. They tell themselves to be nice, keep the peace, not make it a big deal. But that feeling, that quiet discomfort, it's a signal. It's the moment your subconscious recognizes something your conscious mind hasn't caught yet. You were just manipulated. And the terrifying part? You probably thank them for it, because the most effective manipulation doesn't look like control. It looks like kindness, agreement, cooperation, even love. It doesn't feel like force. It feels like choice. Your choice. That's the trap. Because manipulation today doesn't look like a villain. It looks like your partner, your mentor, your best friend. It speaks gently, but it steers deeply. It speaks softly. It knows what you need and uses it. And if you're a good person, empathetic, thoughtful, sincere, you're even more vulnerable. Not because you're weak, but because you assume others operate like you do. Because you think, if I'm kind and clear, no one would intentionally take advantage of me. But they would, and they do. Because it's not the clueless who get controlled. It's the kind-hearted. So let me ask you something directly. Are you sure every decision you've made was really yours? Or were some of them a reaction to guilt, to fear, to the silent need for approval? The game began long before you knew it existed. And if you want to stop playing the part of the pawn, you first need to understand what your opponent is using to control the board. Manipulation rarely looks like a threat. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't storm in, demanding power. The skilled manipulator doesn't need to overpower you. They just need to understand you better than you understand yourself. And once they do, they don't control your actions. They control your motivations. That's what makes manipulation so dangerous. It doesn't argue with your logic. It seduces your emotions and lets you argue with yourself. Let's break down the 3 most common levers of manipulation. Charm, guilt, fear. 1. Charm, the illusion of connection. Charm is the manipulator's smile. It's warmth, eye contact, validation. It's the language of, you're different, I see you, only you understand me. But charm isn't connection, it's performance. It creates emotional debt, because when someone is unusually kind, your instincts push you to reciprocate. They praise you subtly, they listen deeply, they become your emotional shelter, and then lock you inside it. And in that dynamic, they gain leverage. You feel seen, but what you don't realize is you're also being scanned. 2. Guilt, the currency of control. The manipulator plays the victim. They're overwhelmed, misunderstood, always alone. They don't ask directly. They imply. They sigh. They pause. Just long enough for you to fill in the silence with action. And when you hesitate, they don't lash out. They drop subtle cues. I guess I expected too much. I thought I could count on you. Now you feel guilty. You apologize. And you change your behavior to restore the balance, even when the original request was unreasonable. Because guilt doesn't need to make sense. It just needs to make you move. 3. Fear, the threat of emotional consequence. Unlike physical threats, emotional fear is invisible, but just as paralyzing. If you do this, I'll be gone. If you leave, you'll regret it. No one else will love you like I do. These aren't threats of punishment. They're threats of abandonment. And the manipulator knows. We fear disconnection more than conflict. So, they don't chain you. They bind you with doubt. And the scariest part? You believe it was your decision. The most effective manipulation is not coercive. It's collaborative. You end up cooperating with the very person who's disempowering you because you think you're being kind, reasonable, fair. You think you're choosing, but you're reacting. And that's the masterstroke. The manipulator doesn't need to fight your freedom. They just redefine it, and you go along willingly. But manipulators don't operate in a vacuum. They anchor into something that already exists inside you. A crack, a need, a wound you've never fully faced. The manipulator doesn't implant anything foreign in you. They don't create new emotions. They don't need to. All they do is find what's already there. Every human being, no matter how strong, kind, or intelligent, carries emotional vulnerabilities, gaps, unhealed places where certainty slips and need begins. And it's precisely in these emotional blind spots that manipulation takes root. The need for approval. For some, it begins in childhood. You learn that love had conditions. Be good, be helpful, be quiet, be perfect. You learn that affection must be earned, not given. So now, even as an adult, you seek validation to feel worthy. You smile when you want to scream. You say yes when every part of you wants to say no. And a skilled manipulator sees this. They offer praise not to uplift you, but to train you. They drip feed praise like a drug and study how fast you crawl back for the next dose. And before you know it, you're performing for a reward that never lasts. The weight of guilt. Others carry guilt, not for what they've done, but for who they are when they put themselves first. You were told that saying no is selfish, that self-prioritization is wrong. You feel the wrongness, but instead of rejecting it, you question yourself and question your own judgment. Manipulators love this. They don't need to demand. They simply act disappointed. They sigh, withdraw, look hurt, and your guilt fills in the rest. You apologize. You comply, not because you agree, but because you feel responsible for their emotions. The fear of abandonment. Then there's fear. Fear of being left, of being forgotten, of being unloved. If you've ever been emotionally neglected, if love ever felt unstable or conditional, you might carry an invisible dread of disconnection. And the manipulator offers the illusion of safety until you resist. Then, they threaten to pull away, not overtly, just enough to trigger your old fear. You're not afraid of losing them. You're afraid of the silence they used to fill. Well, and so, you stay. Not out of love, but out of fear. The terrifying truth is, manipulation works best on good people. Because good people often carry wounds. They've been taught to hide, rather than heal. But remember this, the manipulator didn't plant those wounds. They only read them. They didn't create your reactions. They only predicted them. They don't overpower you. They work with what already lives inside you. So if the problem lies within, the solution must begin there too. And that's where we go next. Building emotional immunity. Not by hardening, but by awakening. Once you recognize the gaps within yourself, the question becomes, how do I protect them? How do I stop being predictable? How do I build an internal structure so that no one can walk into my psyche uninvited? The answer is not in building walls, but in building immunity, a psychological resilience that makes manipulation ineffective, not because you resist harder, but because you respond differently. Let's break it down into 3 tactical steps. 1. Recognition before reaction. The first line of defense is awareness. You must begin noticing your own patterns. What makes you say yes when you want to say no? What kind of tone, look, or phrase makes you cave? What emotional triggers pull you out of alignment? Pause. Observe. If you feel guilt, fear, or urgency rising, that's not always a sign to act. Often, it's a signal that someone is trying to bypass your reasoning and push you into an emotional decision. Emotional manipulators thrive on speed. They rely on your autopilot. So the moment you become conscious, the system begins to break. 2. Strategic distance. Once you recognize what's happening, create space. This doesn't mean disappearing. It means stepping back emotionally, even while staying physically present. Silence is a weapon. So is stillness. You don't need to explain, justify, or rush to respond. Instead, adopt what Machiavelli might call strategic detachment. Observe their moves without reacting. Notice the patterns. Notice how they escalate when you don't engage. This space allows your rational mind to return. It breaks the trance of emotional urgency and repositions you as the observer, not the subject. This is not coldness. It's clarity. You're not disconnecting from people. You're disconnecting from the programming. 3. Unpredictability as defense. Manipulators thrive on patterns. They study your behavior, anticipate your response, and build their moves accordingly. So change the rhythm. Say no when they expect yes. Say no not loudly, but unexpectedly. Walk away not in anger, but with calm precision. Let confusion do the work you no longer need to. Let confusion do the heavy lifting. Unpredictability forces the manipulator to reveal themselves. They must drop the script, because it no longer works on you. This is not about playing games. It's about reclaiming authorship. The moment you stop being predictable, you stop being programmable. These 3 steps, recognition, space, unpredictability, form a mental firewall. They don't destroy your empathy. They refine it. Because immunity isn't about becoming hardened. It's about interrupting the automatic loop that others rely on to control you. You are not removing emotion. You're removing reflex. You still feel, but this time, your feelings don't come with strings attached. You now act because you decided it was time. But even the sharpest strategy becomes fragile when the manipulator is someone you love. It's easy to spot the strings until the hand pulling them says, "I love you." That's when things get complicated, because now the language of control is mixed with the language of care. In relationships, it may sound like, "I only do this because I love you. No one else would put up with you. If you leave, you'll ruin me." It seems romantic, emotional, even vulnerable. But underneath, it's not love. It's possession wrapped in fear. In family, the same game plays out with different lines. You owe us, after everything we've done for you. Don't forget who raised you. And in the workplace, you should be grateful. You wouldn't be here without me. Don't disappoint me. In each case, you are being asked to exchange freedom for obligation, to substitute loyalty for silence. Emotional control in disguise. The intimate manipulator doesn't command. They suggest. They imply. They sigh. They withdraw affection. They don't forbid your choices. They make you feel guilty for making them. Over time, you begin to filter yourself. What to say, what to hide, when to stay quiet, how to move around their moods. You learn to anticipate reactions before they happen. And just like that, you're trapped in a silent contract. No signature, no exit clause, but binding all the same. Boundaries are not betrayal. Here's the truth. Love may come with care, but never with ownership. The moment it does, it stops being love. Family does not justify guilt. Closeness does not cancel your boundaries. To break the pattern, You must set boundaries without asking for permission. A calm, clear no, without apology, without over-explanation, is often the strongest line you'll ever draw. Then comes exposure, not for revenge, not to shame, but to reclaim your voice. Say, "This dynamic hurts me. I need space. I will not accept guilt disguised as love." And when you say this, expect resistance. The manipulator may retreat, attack, or cry, not because you're wrong, but because they lost the script. Stand firm when loving means leaving. Here's the most painful truth of all. Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. Because if you don't leave the pattern becomes you. And the longer you stay in a space where you're constantly justifying your boundaries, the more your self-worth erodes. When you finally detach from emotional control, you begin to see things you couldn't before. Not just emotionally, but strategically. And that's when you're ready to learn, not just how to feel safe, but how to think like a strategist. Niccolò Machiavelli never sugar-coated reality. He understood something that many still resist today. Power doesn't belong to the virtuous. It belongs to the aware, to those who understand how people work, what drives them, what frightens them, and most importantly, how to predict them. He wrote, "Men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, because everyone sees, but few understand." In other words, perception, truth, and this insight remains the foundation of psychological strategy. Reality versus idealism. The emotional world, love, trust, vulnerability, is beautiful, but in the hands of the wrong person, it becomes leverage. Machiavelli didn't dismiss morality. He simply saw that morality without awareness is vulnerability. He knew that most people don't want truth. They want comfort, certainty, a narrative that feels good. But the strategist chooses differently. They don't react emotionally. They observe strategically. They don't waste time asking, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "Who benefits?" Power through observation. To think like Machiavelli is not to be cold. It is to be clear. In a world where everyone is projecting, pretending, persuading, the person who simply watches quietly is already 2 moves ahead. The Machiavellian doesn't speak to win approval. They study the emotional tempo of the room. They speak last not from doubt, but from design. And when they move, they don't explain, because influence doesn't come from noise. It comes from calculated presence. Emotional control begins with cognitive distance. Most people lose control, not because they lack intelligence, but because they react from emotion. They're baited into arguments. They over-explain, overshare, overcompensate, all while someone else sits silently, watching. Machiavelli would say, "If you cannot control your reactions, you're an open book." The manipulator doesn't need to overpower you. They just need to study your responses and plan accordingly. So how do you counter this? You create cognitive distance. You observe your own mind like a strategist. Ask, "Why am I about to respond? Is this emotion mine? Or was it planted? Does this move help or expose me?" Silence becomes your shield. Timing becomes your edge. Discernment becomes your strategy. Strategy without soul is empty, but soul without strategy is dangerous. This isn't about becoming manipulative. It's about no longer being easy to manipulate. Because if you want to be mentally free in a world built on influence, you must learn to think like the ones who've mastered it. But seeing is not enough. To be truly free, you must rewrite the internal code that once made you so easy to control. Because the deepest prison isn't built by others. It's built by the stories we keep repeating to ourselves. Until now, we've been talking about external forces, the manipulators, the tactics, the power games. But there's one manipulator more dangerous than all the rest. The one living inside your own mind. Because long before someone else tries to control you, you've already been trained to control yourself. You've inherited ideas, absorbed beliefs, swallowed narratives that were never truly yours, but you live by them anyway. The internal script. Long before you had your own thoughts, someone handed you their version of who you should be. Be good. Don't be selfish. Keep the peace. Don't make people uncomfortable. Be nice. Be quiet. Be useful. These weren't just lessons. They were conditions. Conditions for being loved, accepted, safe. And now, you confuse these conditions with your personality. I hate disappointing people. I always put others first. But ask yourself, is that who you are? Or who you were trained to be? Thoughts that aren't yours. Many of your automatic thoughts aren't actually yours. They're echoes, leftovers from parents, teachers, media, relationships, repeating like background noise in your mind. Don't say that you'll sound arrogant. Don't ask for too much. People will think you're difficult. Don't set boundaries, they'll leave you. You hear these thoughts and treat them as truths, but they're just programming. And the only way to break the code is to stop accepting every thought as your own. Start asking, who installed this rule and why did I never question it? Does this belief serve me or control me? Redefining what it means to be good. One of the deepest manipulations is how society defines goodness. You're told that being good means always saying yes, always putting others first, always being soft, accommodating, available. But true goodness isn't blind compliance. It's conscious choice. You can be kind and assertive, loving and firm, generous and discerning. Redefining what it means to be good isn't rebellion. It's liberation. From programmed to present. Reprogramming your mind doesn't happen in one dramatic act. It happens every time you pause and choose. Every time you say, this voice isn't mine. This rule no longer applies. This emotion doesn't get to make this decision for me. You move from puppet to participant, from conditioned to conscious. That's what it means to become the author of your own life. You don't erase your past. You rewrite your relationship to it. You don't become someone else. You become someone real. And when you dare to rewrite your internal narrative, no one can rewrite you from the outside again. Mental sovereignty isn't about becoming invincible. It's about becoming unshakable. In a world driven by influence, image, and emotional bait, you don't need to outsmart everyone. You just need to stop being so easy to play. You don't need to control others. You only need to learn how not to be controlled. Here are 5 laws. Simple to remember, hard to master. But if practiced, they'll shift how you think, how you move, and how much power you truly hold. Law jeden. Don't react. Observe. The manipulator thrives on one thing: your reaction. It's not what they say. It's how quickly you flinch, defend, explain, retaliate. Every emotional reaction is a lever they can use again. So, pause. Breathe. Let the heat pass through without catching fire. Notice what they're trying to provoke. Is it guilt? Urgency? Ego? Silence is not weakness. It's leverage. Law 2. Respect the boundaries you set. A boundary that must be defended constantly is not a boundary. It's a negotiation. When you say no, mean it. When you say stop, hold the line. Clarity is more powerful than conflict. Let your firmness be quiet, but immovable. You're not being cold. You're being clear. You're not being rude. You're being responsible for yourself. Law 3. Question the compliment. Flattery is one of the oldest tools in psychological warfare. It lowers your guard. It softens your skepticism. It opens the door. That doesn't mean all praise is fake, but it's often strategic. So ask, why this compliment? Why now? What version of me do they want me to become, and who benefits if I do? Not every kind word is kindness. Some are just well-dressed bait. Law 4. Protect your inner space. Not everyone deserves full access to your mind. You don't owe people your emotional process, your plans, your every thought. Privacy is power. The more of you that's exposed, the easier you are to predict, provoke, manipulate. Keep a piece of yourself for yourself. Let others wonder. Let silence do the talking when necessary. When you stay a little unknown, you stay unshakable. Law 5. Audit your mind daily. Your mind is not a closed system. It's shaped constantly by what you consume, what you repeat, what you accept. So ask, whose voice is loudest in my mind today? Is that voice building me or quietly rewriting me? Mental sovereignty doesn't begin with resistance. It begins with awareness. You can't control the world, but you can decide how much of yourself it gets to touch. And in that decision, you reclaim what no one else should hold, your mind. You've seen how manipulation works, not through force, but through your fears, your guilt, your need to be loved. You've learned that freedom doesn't come from resisting others. It comes from recognizing your own patterns and choosing differently. But knowing isn't enough. Nothing changes until you act. It starts with one small moment, pausing before reacting, questioning a thought you've always accepted, holding your boundary when it feels uncomfortable. That's where real power lives, in the silence between trigger and response. So let me ask you, when did you first realize you were being manipulated? And what did you do next? Comment below. Tell me the moment you saw it, the conversation, the person, the pattern. Because saying it out loud isn't just release, it's resistance. Because the moment you collapse the illusion, that's how every lie loses its power. And if this video made you think, don't stop here. Watch the next one. It's not just more information, it's the next step in your mental freedom. Asterisk. You've seen the map. Now the pen is in your hand. Will you let others keep writing your story? Or will you begin to write it for yourself? Asterisk.